I left off at the place where Christ was crucified and where he died. And after he was crucified and he died, they took his body down. Some women were there. John was there. Joseph, a wealthy man, and Nicodemus, a Pharisee. They were there. And they took the body down. And they were up against the clock because it was the Sabbath time and there were restrictions on what they were allowed to do and not do. But they took some spices, which were quite valuable, and they put them on the cloths and they wrapped him in the cloth. And this man, Joseph, not Jesus' stepdad, but this other man, gave his tomb, a tomb that had been etched out of stone, based on the soil and the characteristics in that area. It had to be etched out. A very expensive tomb. And they laid his body in there. And the Pharisees, to be sure, rolled the stone back in front and put a couple Roman soldiers to guard the tomb. But that wasn't the end. Let me tell you, as Phil Wickham says, let me tell you what happened next. Let me tell you what happened next. Because this isn't like anybody else. This story's not going to be like anybody else. You can get great people in history, great leaders in history. Muhammad was poisoned by a captive Jewish woman after he and his soldiers had killed the family. They don't talk about that too much, do they? Other famous leaders dead and gone. But here, Matthew chapter 28, verses 1 through 10. This is what happened next. After the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. Former. I have read about multiple people who were atheists that said, if you're making up the story that Jesus rose from the dead, you would never pick in that day and age or in any day and age the first one who knows. The very first one who knows is that woman or any woman. Do you know that in that era, as is true in many countries today, a woman cannot be a witness? Look what God did. That he's literally convinced atheists and people who study the historical resurrection as a fact, that these writers said, there it is, Mary Magdalene. No confusion. Not the Lord's mother, not these other ones. In fact, Matthew just says, and the other Mary. Well, they're not even sure who the other Mary is. It's not even mentioned in Mark. So they go to look at the tomb. It's Sunday morning. It's dawn, or just before dawn, early at dawn. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and, going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. Now here they were assigned to this job, guarding things, a couple soldiers. They're like, this is the easiest job we've had. We got to watch this dead guy's tomb. His apostles and disciples have all run like schoolgirls. He has no power, and we just got the easiest job for the weekend. Until this angel comes. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid." Why do you think she said that? I don't know. I've never seen an angel, but I got a feeling if one jumps right here, we'd all be scared. We'd be scared. Scared. Scared? I mean, it's just going to happen. For I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. Fact. He is not here. He has risen just as he said. Why are you looking for the living among the dead? That's not in there. Come and see the place where he lay. Literally an invitation, which we'll talk about in a minute. They go quickly and tell the disciples, he has risen from the dead and he's going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you. So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, mixed emotions, and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. Greetings, he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshiped him. Then Jesus said to them, do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me. Title of my message, He is Risen, the Reversal of Eden. The reversal of Eden. I'm going to invite you to do this if you can do this with me. Children are in the service. They're better at this than us. I want you to use your imagination. If you still have one after being on the phone for 10 hours a day. I want you to use your imagination. You can close your eyes or not. If you do, I'll think you're sleeping. And I want you to use your mind's eye. I have my daughter Cassia here from Florida, and when she was young, she could play for 6 hours without taking even a bathroom break. She had an unbelievable imagination. But I want you, all kidding aside now, to use your mind's eye. Picture Google Earth spinning around, and you're zooming down, and you get put right there. We're all standing in front of this tomb. Okay? I have these weird things for some reason. I like this website. Maybe it's morbid. It probably is, and it's another thing wrong about me. I like the website Find a Grave. It's a website. I've been on it a lot of times. My wife knows that I like to go to cemeteries. I do. I like to walk around them, and I like to read the tombstones. And anytime I see one, I've never seen one that I don't want to walk around. The older, the better. The more beat up, the better. So on this particular site, you can actually see anybody's grave. And what happens here is that we're using our mind's eye, okay, but we're going to have to do it this way of like we're imagining in the side of a rock, a dug out rock, a huge stone has been rolled away, and we're all standing in front of it. And our tour guide is an angel. The invitation is an angel. You know how they have the translating and we have these things in their ears? That's what we've got because, some of us can't hear good and stuff. So we're all wearing those things on our ears. And the angel is speaking to all of us in our own language. And what he says is, come and see the place where he lay. There's a couple old manuscripts, they don't think they're the best, where it says, come and see the place where our Lord lay. I kind of like it a little bit because it implies that the angel understands that he is Lord, not just of people, but of them. And he's testifying that. But anyways, you go to this place. Now, the only thing I can really think of in America is the Lincoln Memorial. That I've been there. If you have a chance in D.C., it's worth going there. No charge. And you see some of the words, and it's very moving. And so this idea of people going and traveling distances to see somebody great, and we're going to do that today. This is, in a sense, a shrine of greatness. He's that great. He's that good. However, juxtaposed with the shrine of greatness, the greatest man who ever lived, it's also the tomb of your best friend. We have the history, the fact, the life-changing, history-changing nature of this, but then we have the personal nature. That he is your best friend. If any of you have been to, I'm sure all of you have lost somebody that you love. And it is in the habits of some people to like to go to a graveside and sit down and put some flowers down and wet the grass in front of the stone with their tears. It's very personal. And when people do that, there's a way in which they can feel as though things in their personal life can be resolved. And it says in Scripture that there is a one who sticks closer than a brother, and that's Jesus Christ. And so this is the grave of your best friend. So come and see where he lay. In your mind, just see it. This is where he lay. We have this amazing tour guide, this angel, and what he's doing is he is chaperoning you into the place which is the death place of death itself. The empty tomb is the death place of death. Picture death as a prison. Picture a prison that's just impenetrable, maximum security. Everyone who went into that prison never got out. Never got out. Nobody ever got out of that prison. It was dark. It was gloomy. The door swings one way. And so one day, in the most worst, God-forsaken place in the universe, this prison called death, a man voluntarily walks into that prison. He not only voluntarily walks in, he takes your place before you have to go in there. He not only does that, but he is given all sorts of mistreatment above and beyond what anyone else faces, but he willingly enters. Unbeknownst to the prison guards, sin, sorrow, sickness, this stripped down man carries within himself the key of life. He carries it within himself. He is the key of life. And like Samson, who took down that door in the archways, which someday I want to preach on Samson, Christ opens right here the gates of heaven for us and the gates of life. And so this tomb that is the death of death is the gate of heaven. This is the gate of heaven. I mean, all these movies now have portals, don't they? Even The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, you go in there. This is the portal for real from death to life. You go in that place, you don't come out the same. And here's the thing. We talked about the shrines of, Abraham or Lincoln or famous people go to James Morrison of the Doors. They go to his grave or this person or do something. Here's the thing that's the biggest difference of all is they're still in that grave and he's not in that tomb. And the angel said, take a look. Take a look. He's not in there. I talked about we're imagining us going in there. It's literally the break of dawn. It is absolutely peaceful, quiet, maybe a few birds. But this spot, this empty tomb, is a quiet place. If you need rest in your life, if you need rest, if your body is weary, if your brain is fried, if your soul is tired, come to this spot. You can find rest. Find rest there. The silent tomb is the loudest victory. Some thoughts about the tomb itself. It says that it's a costly tomb. It says that it was the tomb of a rich man. Now, Jesus, who when he walked the earth didn't have two nickels to rub together, had a one-piece gown that had no embroidery whatsoever, who on the cross was stripped naked, who his sandals on earth were just had no fancy metal, gold, diamonds, nothing. I struggled with, why would it be the tomb of a rich man? And the answer, I think, is that when Christ walked this earth, died the death he did, that was all part of the temptation and trials to prove he was the perfect sacrifice, worthy of suffering. He suffered on the cross, and then after he died and his work was finished, his Father said, that's it. No more dishonoring my son's body. No more dishonoring him. He shall not see decay. He will not have the worm enter him. He will not smell death. That's it. He drew a line and said no further, and you don't mess with the Father. You got a father that you don't mess with? I had one of those. No more shall this body be disgraced. No more shall people spit on this body. No more shall people hurl insults. No more shall he be trampled underfoot. He was despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and we esteemed him not, but his Father did. And his Father said, from now on, okay, he's been taken down, but he'll be wrapped with the best of the spices. He'll be put in an expensive tomb. He will have these noblemen, Joseph and Nicodemus, attend his funeral and be present there. He will be treated with respect. It is finished, Jesus said. And the Father said, you better believe it is. You better believe it is. And when he comes back next time, he's not skipping in on a donkey. But even though it was a costly grave, it was a rental. It was a rental. I don't know what it is, but somebody explained to me that people like to rent super expensive cars so they can take pictures in front of them. And this is a true story. One of my friends texted me somebody selling a really expensive car on some web page, and the car is parked in front of my house. And they said, I have a nice stone house. They said, are you selling this car? I said, I don't know anything about this. But they didn't borrow my house to take that picture. But this was a rental. Now, some things you don't think of as rentals, right? You don't think of a grave as a rental. But when Jesus spoke to Joseph, he must have told him, don't worry, I'm just going to need it for 3 days. I don't want to pay the full amount. Just 3 days. And you know, you ever give a rental or do a rental for someone? What happens? They trash the thing, right? They trash it. This wasn't the worst for the wear. This wasn't the worst for the wear. This had the presence of Jesus inside of it. He paid it back with interest. Why did he have a borrowed grave? Because he borrowed our sins. Because he borrowed our debts. Now, when you borrow something, you have to pay them back, but he tricked us there. He borrowed our sins and he didn't give them back to us. He paid for our debts in full. You ever have somebody, you're trying to pay something, you got the thing, and hey, let me see that for a second. Boom. And then they pay it, and then you're like, whoa, what happened here? Oh, sorry. Paid it. That's what he did. A borrowed tomb for borrowed sins. They're still not on him. It was a tomb that no body had ever laid in. Nobody had ever laid in. A virgin tomb in a man born in a virgin womb. Why? Why is that important? That's important because there was people who believed and would have said, oh, sure, he rose from the dead. Moses was probably buried there. Remember Elisha? They buried the man and they touched the bones of Elisha and the man came back to life. No. This thing was cut out of the rock. And then there was the thing that the disciples stole the body. Oh, yeah? They didn't have power tools. What do you think they did? Drill inside? With what? Bunch of fishermen? But my big idea I haven't even gotten to Time here. All right, the title of my message, He is Risen, the Reversal of Eden. Some of you haven't heard my series. I did one Back to the Garden, and I did Genesis, and I spoke about the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden, what happened is that the devil put us in wrong relationship with God, which resulted in us having death and facing death. And so I want us to look at the significance of the resurrection by going back to the cross. Now, Jesus, when he was on earth, said about the temple. He's in the temple of the Jews. He says, destroy this temple, and in 3 days, what? I will raise it up again. And he was speaking about the temple of his body, which is something that they missed. But here's the funny thing. He makes a point, destroy this temple, in 3 days I'll rise it again. They miss the point. They think he's just talking about the temple. And by missing the point, they validate the point that he made when they crucify him. See, we all have done this. We've all rebelled against God one way, shape, or form or another at some point in our life. And in that, we validated what the garden teaches us, that we are all rebels against God. We played into his hands because he has a redemption planned. Unwittingly, everything goes back to the garden. You can read story after story in the Old Testament that speaks of Christ. You could talk about the sacrifice of Isaac that didn't happen, the bronze serpent with Moses, the Passover lamb, Jesus died on Passover, Jonah in the fish. I could go on and on. Psalm 22, Isaiah 53. But all of these things started with Genesis 3, the fall of man, in the Garden of Eden when man fell. Here's the point. Point one, every physical detail of the crucifixion of Christ's suffering is a deliberate undoing of the fall of man in Eden. You know, surgeons can reverse things. You're a young woman, you've had a couple of kids, you think, that's it, I don't want any more. You get your tubes tied. Do you know that you can get your tubes unreversed? It's surgery, but it can be done. Fallopian tubes can open them back up. This, if you will, Jesus, the good physician, what does he do? He undoes the fall of man. He does a surgical reversal of original sin, the first sin. He cuts out the branding and tracking device that the devil put on every one of us. Now, what am I talking about? Well, my understanding is that if you have an animal in areas like, let's say, Texas, a steer that you want to raise for your livelihood, you're a rancher, you get a big crowd of them and you get them mixed up. You can't tell whose is who. And so they take a unique mark, an indicator, and they brand, right, with something hot, like a hot poker that shows a stamp, this is mine. And every single one of us from Adam and Eve, which you are all sons of Adam or daughters of Eve, We're branded. As the enemy said, this one's mine, this one's mine. But then you have this. Why did Jesus have to die on a cross? A cross of wood. Jesus climbed the tree. We ate the fruit. What Jesus is doing here is Jesus is going back to the scene of the crime that we picked from that tree of wood, and he dies on that tree. The cross is called a tree. By dying on a tree. The weapon of humanity's downfall would be the wood of the salvation of man. And then you take the hands. The hands were pierced. They were pinned. And you go back to the garden and you see them grabbing with their physical hands and taking the fruit. Remember earlier, take and eat? And they're using that. Selfishness, pride, mine, I want this. None of us have ever had that happen. None of us have had that feeling. None of us here are guilty of that sin, fortunately. But Jesus' hands are pinned like this, arms open wide. Not selfishly, pinned right there, atoning for the theft of the fruit. Instead of selfishness, it's selflessness. Remember the ness? We already talked about the side. Right? Blood and water come out. Eve came out of the side of Adam. Redemption is for the woman and the man. And then the feet. His feet were nailed to the cross. Now, if you go back to Genesis 3:15, that when the fall happens, God curses the serpent, Satan. And the first prophecy in the Bible, and I talked about it when we went through back to the garden, and we talked about it when I went through the book of Genesis. The first prophecy that from the moment of the fall, God had a plan. And he told the enemy, the devil, he didn't ask for any explanation of what he did. He just said, look, I'm going to put enmity between you and the woman and the seed of the woman, or the offspring of the woman. Every time the Bible speaks about a seed in the Bible, it speaks of the seed of a man. You know what I mean. Young ears here. But the one time it speaks of the seed of the woman is right here. The Virgin Mary. The seed of the woman. I will put enmity between you and the seed of the woman. And that woman will have a seed that you will crush his heel. You will strike his heel. You will bite his heel. You will sink your fangs into him. But he will crush your head. And so, when you see the cross and you see the nails, and those nails go right through both feet. And he's standing as he was crucified. And every time he takes a breath, he has to stand up. The enemy of our souls, the devil, thought that by pinning Christ, he was immobilizing him. But he created A press. A press allows you to have greater force when you strike something. A fixation point that allowed him to crush the devil's head. Let me explain this different way. I'm off my notes here. I'll be done in 5. Let's get the worship team up. I got called that somebody was bleeding after a cardiac catheterization this week. A needle in the femoral artery, and they're bleeding for a long time. I'm a vascular surgeon. I go to look at it, and I feel like, okay, this has been bleeding a long time. I might have to take them to surgery to stitch up. But a simple thing had happened, that the patient's back was up while they were holding pressure. Because the back was up, when they were holding pressure, they were putting pressure on the front of the artery, but there was nothing to secure the back of the artery. I literally just had them lower the back of the table, and within 5 minutes, the bleeding stopped. Yeah, it's simple. There's the femur bone that when your hip is flexed, it's soft. When it's taut, you feel the firmness there. There needed to be a point that when you press that artery, it holds it in place. Jesus said, thank you very much for holding my foot in place, because I'm going to crush the devil's head right now, and he's done. And so the resurrection is an affirmation that what happened on the cross is real. That he who killed death not just for himself, but killed death for us. And so what is death now? It's a bath in which we get to change our dirty clothes. What is death? It's a transition point from life. It is the gate of very life. It is what we will no longer fear. And it is the guarantee of having reunion with those who have gone before us. And the last point that I will make here is what happened is that what the enemy used as a foil, God used to fulfill. This is the reversal of Easter. People that do judo tell me that they take a much stronger person and they use their force against them. And so they attack you like this, and the judo person just sidesteps them and has them fall on their face. And so it is that the very elements of the fall, a tree, a woman, a garden, a hand reaching, all of these things, God said, thank you very much. I'll show that in every one of the wounds. The last of the wounds, and I'll end here, was the crown of thorns on his head, which was a curse that the soil would bear thorns and thistles, weeds. I hate them. And that would be a curse. And so God so loved the world that he even was redeeming not just us, but this world, and that one day there would be a new heaven and a new earth. And we would have a new body. And so this Easter Sunday is an affirmation that he is risen. The tomb is empty. It's an empty tomb. Look at the place where he lay. This is now the portal to life. We have hope. I don't care what you've done. I mean, I said I've ended 3 times. I really will end with this. You can, if you think about it, it just seems too high a price for God to save us. I mean, this is the mixed emotion of sorrow and joy. It just seems too high a price that he would send his son to die for us. That's just too much. I mean, it's just so high a price to give his very best. But it wasn't the end. And he showed us it wasn't the end. And he did it because he loved us. And so we rejoice that the tomb is empty. We have the hope of forgiveness, of a clean slate. That tomb didn't stink. It had the fragrance of divinity in it. You give your life to him, he cleans out the garbage in your life. You will have a new scent. The fragrance of divinity will be on your life. If you've never given your life to Jesus, why not Easter Sunday? Come forward. We'll pray with you. You can pray in your seat. You say, you're the Lord. I believe you rose from the dead. The early disciples were martyred because they would not deny that Christ had rose from the dead. It was undisputed that he was crucified, but the meaning of the crucifixion is nothing unless we have the resurrection.